I'm Daniel Minty, a cognitive behavioral therapist, teacher, and writer. If a gold thread runs through art, spirituality, and CBT, it might be that one we call soul. Each of these disciplines seeks access to soul, to the core of our existence, a direct experience of reality. Each informs the others, shedding light on those places that lie in shadow in the other disciplines. I recently had the good fortune of chatting with a deeply soulful person who is an adept in each of these fields. Cypress Morales is a licensed cognitive behavioral therapist, studio artist, and certified mindfulness teacher. One of her recent paintings hangs behind me. Though I've not asked, it looks a lot like a view from the ocean of her hometown, Santa Cruz, California. Welcome to our wide-ranging conversation. All right, well, Cypress, I'm really excited about our time together here this afternoon. Thanks so much for coming on board. I understand that you started your art career as a muralist.
Yes, I did. Excuse me, I did. Yes, age 3.
Yeah, I would love to hear the story of your first mural.
Well, I started out at about age 3.5, using our beautiful white wall in our living room and some beautiful chosen color crayons to do a mural for my mom and dad and the family. That's how I started out as an artist. I didn't really receive the kind of ovation that I should have for my what do you call it, opus magnum or magnum opus, whatever it is, but it was huge for me. And but still I continued art, you know, and I studied in college along with psychology and organic biology, so the biological sciences, and then I got a BA in painting in my early 20s. So yeah, and then quit for 45 years.
Mm.
Yeah, and started 2 years ago again painting. And I raised 4 sons, beautiful sons and grandchildren. Yeah.
You are a Renaissance woman.
Yes.
So art was in your blood, it sounds like. And then after studying in college, your attention went in other directions. What led you to come back a couple years back and start painting again?
That's a good question. I really studied the healing arts for quite a bit of time and enjoyed, and I'm still enjoying working with people and doing healing. Um, so I don't know what brought me back. Oh, you know what? I think it was, I started doing, I'm going to show you a book, The
Oh,
Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I wanted to get back into the art and bringing kind of weaving CBT into it is that I had all these thoughts and ideas and beliefs that I had to be responsible. And art was something you do when all of your responsibilities are taken care of, right? They never got taken care of. It was endless. So, you know, using CBT, as I recall, and that's really, it's bringing back that memory. I was actually in a class with Dr. David Burns when I got um, that I started working on why is it that I don't do my art, right? And I started doing some daily mood logs on that. And um, it just, and then I thought, I think I'd like to semi-retire and start doing art, having more time to do it. Although I still don't do it as often as I would like to. Um, but that really helped was looking at the belief system that I had about doing creative arts for myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When you spoke of healing arts, I thought of the trauma work that I do. And in my first book, Reclaiming Life After Trauma, I write about a patient who lost his partner to AIDS and was just not only grief stricken, but pretty suicidal, hopeless about life without this wonderful partner that he had had for many years. And he was sharing his sadness with an old teacher of his from Argentina. And the old man listened to him and then said, "Put this into your dance." And that was a turning point for my patient to find that by dancing his grief, that he was able to come to terms with it.
Mhm.
And the his students, he's a professional dancer, his audience recognized there was a new depth to what he was doing. So he was positively reinforced for using this art form to heal himself. And I've seen this again and again with painters, with writers, with photographers who heal themselves from traumatic events by creating beauty.
Mhm. Yeah, I have too. I've seen that with trauma and different things. Yeah. And you're a poet.
Mhm.
And did you start out with that as a healing for yourself?
Hmm.
Using.
You know, I think actually my first art form was the violin.
Mhm.
And I was like fourth grade or something. And my mom, who was a painter and a singer, took me to the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And she said, listen to all the instruments and see if there's one you'd like to play.
Oh.
And so I listened to the horns and to the woodwinds and to the strings. And there was one sound that rose above the rest, which was the violin.
Mhm.
And I said, whatever that is, I want to learn to play that.
Mhm.
So she got me a violin, and my sister, Nancy, was studying music. She's a pianist. And so we began playing together. I think this was my first expression of soul
Mhm.
uh, via art.
Mhm.
And music remains very close to me today.
Do you still play the violin? Yeah.
You know, I set that down. I studied through college
Uh-huh.
and then reached a point where I realized if I want to continue to develop and grow, I'll have to make a new commitment and study many hours a day.
Mhm.
And I decided not to do that. So I picked up the guitar, which is a more forgiving fellow traveler for musicians who don't have hours a day to spend on their art. And that's my traveling companion these days.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
You say that you've noticed that there's a link between art and healing. like to hear a little bit more about your experience of that or what you've seen in your work as a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Okay. Let me think. There's something that Eckhart Tolle, is it Eckhart Tolle? I think that's how you pronounce his name. Said is that when an artist is doing art, they are free from thought. It's a paraphrase of what he said, but that's how I feel though, is that I I love color and form and design, and it's like, I think the amazing thing for me is that I can be in any kind of mood, although I like to be more free from thought. Um, but it's amazing to be able to put anything on canvas. It's like, oh, look, there's a flower that's emerging. It's just so super exciting. And then, what do I want in the background? It's like, it's so lovely to just be thinking in form and color without a lot of thought that goes along with it, you know. And so I think, like, I did a daily mood log today. This has nothing to do with any of my paintings, but I would do something like a daily mood log. That was kind of a quick show, um, kind of to empty myself, and then do, like, in the artist way, 3 pages, morning pages of writing to allow the thoughts to leave. And then there's more of a freedom of beingness, the the being. And something also that Eckhart Tolle said, and it brings us to mindfulness and all of this, is that the doer is on this continuum going this way. Time time the doer is on the time continuum, and the person, the being is on this continuum. And so by emptying myself, I don't know if you can see there, I leave this continuum and I go into this one, along with the freedom of cognitive behavioral, and also mindfulness, letting go of thoughts.
Mhm. There's a Taosania painter, Agnes Martin, who is lesser known than Georgia O'Keeffe or uh, Gorman or some of the other names you'd associate with northern New Mexico. Um, and very interesting woman. There's a whole room in the local museum that's dedicated to her work. She designed the room and the paintings that went into it. But in talking about her work, she said that intellect is problematic when it comes to creating art and by extension living life. She called it the servant of the ego. And so for her to create art,
Mhm.
she would empty her mind. She would sit and purposefully not think. She
Mhm.
would look at a tree, say, leaving thought out of the picture until something moved in her.
Mhm.
And then she would pick up her brush and start to work.
Mhm.
So, this emptying the mind seems for some artists to be the starting point.
Mhm.
That with a mind that's cluttered with ideas or, you know, facts or stuff, there wouldn't be room for inspiration. But
Mhm.
when the
Right.
mind can quiet, something could come forward
Mhm.
that would be new, would be fresh, would be real. Um, Wallace Stevens said the poem is the cry of its occasion. The
Mhm.
poem is not about something. a poem comes up out of the occasion of the poet's life and expresses that life. So in that way, it seems very much a fellow traveler with meditative practice, which oftentimes uses language like emptying the mind.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we can empty the mind completely, but you say this artist does. I mean, I, I've been studying mindfulness for the last 2 years, probably a lot longer than that. But supposedly we have between 60,000 and like 80,000 thoughts a day. And there's probably some of them just slipping by that we might just ignore. Do you know what I mean? And that might be part of the emptying of the mind is ignoring them, you know, to like what you're talking about, this artist, that she's focusing on a tree in a different way where maybe all the concepts of that tree aren't there for her. She's just seeing the tree and the freshness of it, and then that makes so much sense, doesn't it, to have that spring come up of that freshness of seeing in a new way.
Of responding
Mhm.
directly to something or to
Mhm.
someone
Yeah.
or an event. Picasso painted Guernica after that city was leveled uh, by bombers during World War II. Kurt Vonnegut wrote Slaughterhouse Five. He was in Dresden when it was firebombed by the Allies. So a direct response to the horror of great destruction and human suffering, I suspect is cathartic
Yeah.
for people like Picasso or Vonnegut, who probably could not have processed that in any other way.
And there was an inventor, a great one, who's the one that had the apple. What was his name about gravity? Um,
Oh, Newton?
I think it was Newton. There was this great inventor during one of a global pandemic, had more inventions than ever because there was nowhere to go again, right? You think of all the different things that we can have come up when we're still like that.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to hear a bit about the training that you're wrapping up here this weekend, I think you said.
Ah, that's true. Thank you. So I've been training with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock, two, to me, amazingly people of the heart, you know, and of pure blue mind, just so heartfelt. And so I started doing. I had the intuition that I was going to be getting a new life on. So I started 2 years ago, and just been have received so much from. We would get a module every week, a new module on mindfulness or meditation, not only from them, but many people in the field, you know. Um, and then we would meet with a mentor and we would meet with a peer group with people all over the world. Um, and so there's actually 1,300 of us in this little pod
Wow.
celebrating tomorrow graduation. Yeah. And I still need to do an introductory class and a full day teaching to get my certification. I'm almost there.
Mm.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Sounds like a wonderful company and a huge accomplishment on top of everything else that you're doing to get certified. And I think you told me you would start doing some teaching.
Yes. Yes, Daniel. Um, my thought is that I'd like to bring it to the community, just donation only, and free for whoever wants it, but really to just spread it to the community. And that's one thing that's really beautiful that I've noticed about um, the organization that Buddhism, you know, that different organizations is that, if you're unable to afford to be in a workshop, they make it doable so that everybody can do it. And I think, oh my God. And Dr. David Burns, you know, he makes his workshops so available to everybody. And I never would have done that been able to do that for 4 years if it wasn't available financially for me
Mm.
every week to be part of, the cognitive behavioral team and feeling good team with him. And so, yes, I want to make it available for everybody.
Well, thank you for that generous spirit and open heart. I've experienced Dr. Burns in exactly those ways as well. Just gives so much to so many. And we spoke with him recently about our low intensity CBT program in the Pomona Valley in California, where we're training 20 Latinx immigrant women to deliver team CBT in their communities. And the training is free to them.
Mhm.
And we're hoping that by training lay therapists, they'll be able to pass on these tremendous tools that we've developed to those who most need them, but who probably don't have the resources to go on the open market and buy therapy in California these days. So I think the low intensity CBT model is also a very generous um, attempt to make the resources available to anyone who would have need of them. And certainly the mindfulness traditions have had that spirit to them as well. I've trained in the Zen tradition for going on 50 years now. And many of my teachers and communities have been very generous with me in terms of making the training available. I was actually doing Zen before I started doing cognitive behavioral therapy. But when I started learning CBT, I realized this is just a different language game
Mhm.
from what we do when we do mindfulness practice. So in Buddhism, we would talk about delusive thoughts. In cognitive therapy, we talk about irrational thoughts. But we're talking about the same things.
Absolutely.
Those are just two descriptions for the way in which we get our cognition sideways with the way things really are, and then suffer as a result.
Mhm. Mhm.
In cognitive behavioral therapy, we might speak of self-defeating beliefs. In Buddhism, we'd speak of the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance, out of which those delusive thoughts would arise. I'm wondering if you see a parallel between mindfulness practice and the practice of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is really tied together, I think. And mindfulness is, um, I, s- I experience mindfulness and see it and listen to other people talk about it as being fully present in the moment. So when we're present in the moment, that means that we're embodied, we're in our body, um, we're with our breath, and And with that, then we can choose which thoughts to entertain, which thoughts not to entertain. Sometimes we have more of a choice with that. And with that, being mindful, it slows ourselves down. Because I use this in therapy, actually. I use a mindfulness of, because I'm going to tie it all together, but I always go on these long tangents. Um, is that there's a secondary emotion that is very fast with the mind when it's going really fast, and thought, rather than the primary feelings. And so when the mind is the thought system is going really fast, I will ask my clients to take a deep breath and slow themselves down so that they become embodied and actually can, you know, think slower and feel themselves, embody themselves, and then they can see what their needs are in a more primary way with primary emotion. And so I think mindfulness gives us the ability to be more in being, to slow ourselves down, to notice the events and what we're thinking about the events that are creating, our emotions too. So it gives us a much more, it gives us a place where we can be more in at choice, definitely for myself. And cognitive behavioral is so much the same, just like what you were talking about, the distorted thinking, our distorted thoughts, to put down a specific event or thought, up at the top of our page in our daily mood. And then to really see what emotions that event or those thinking, that specific thought is, what kind of emotions it brings up, and what kind of thoughts it brings up. And then to be able to go through the list of the 10 distortions of that thought, and to see how we believe the distortions, and that we can change them. And when we can change the distortions and just change our self-defeating beliefs, negative beliefs, then we have that space, just like in mindfulness, where we have such a place of choice and that spaciousness to be able to choose, like between the stimulus and the event, or there's that place of calm where we can choose. And I think they're very, very, very similar. And it's lovely to be able to use both, both for myself in my own life. Everything that I help clients with, I always do on myself first to make sure it works, right? Are you the same way?
Oh yeah, I don't even see much, separation between the work I do on myself and the work I help other selves do on their selves.
Yeah.
I think those are somewhat arbitrary distinctions,
Mm.
me, you, that kind of thing. I appreciated your pointing out that using a cognitive method like a daily mood log
Mhm.
would be a way of slowing down and becoming more aware of what's happening in our minds, perhaps also in our bodies. Sometimes I'll have people write in what they're experiencing physically when they're hanging out with a particular thought pattern and the emotions that travel with it, because that emotion and cognition is always embodied.
It is,
You
isn't
can't
it?
have thought without a whole structure, and of
Mhm.
course can't have emotion from the chin up or something.
No,
I
that's true.
was talking with our colleague Matt May a while back, and we were noticing that meditation, sitting still, could be seen as a form of exposure. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, we're treating anxiety, say,
Mhm.
it's almost non-negotiable that we will expose ourselves to the thing that we're afraid of if we want to crush that fear.
Yes.
And we were noticing that when we sit down, we're doing exposure basically to ourselves.
Mm.
And instead of running off from ourselves, keeping busy, thinking stuff, seeking out other people, we're sitting in the reality of who we are. And for everyone I know, myself included, when we first start doing that, that can be excruciating
Mhm.
because we've been living life on the hoof from who we are.
Mhm.
So to stop running, to sit down and say, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be with whatever comes up is a real sea change. And I know it was for me, my development as a young person. And my patients have spoken to this as well.
Mhm. We're so used to distracting ourselves. You're totally right about that. You know, that then we get to see that we get to watch the distractions. We get to watch it, right? I just did Vipassana uh, meditation, a 10-day course with S.N. Goenka. And I did that right before the COVID started. And it was a silent retreat. And I had never done that particular kind of meditation. Mine has been before that for about 40 years. It was transcendental meditation.
Hmm.
Started in my early 20s. And then and this was really interesting because I believe that he even said that the Buddha said that we can actually become awakened through going through the body, through just experiencing the body and the sensations. And so it was 10 days and getting up at 4 a.m. and not looking at anybody and not
Mhm.
talking for 10 days and just meditating straight. And I loved it. It was really, it was very, it was a little difficult. I had definitely some things, some thoughts come up, and I had to really wrestle with them,
Mhm.
allow them, just allow them to be,
Mhm.
yeah, and to let go of them. It was
Mhm.
lovely.
What
You've
a
done,
gift.
have you done long meditation, silent retreats for yourself?
I have, yes. And they're one of my favorite things to do, to just sit down, particularly in a community.
Mhm.
So pre-pandemic to sit. I've done retreats with, 120, 150 people jammed together in a small Zen center for um, a week, 10 days or so,
Mm.
not looking at each other, not talking, just doing our practice together. And I've found that it's one of the most intimate spaces I know, to be together in an intentional way and not be talking, not be looking at each other, be foregoing the usual forms of social interaction and traveling in something deeper with each other.
Mhm.
It's a tremendous experience and can, of course, be tremendously challenging too.
Mhm.
My first Zen teacher, Robert Aitken, was talking to a very new student. And this young man had heard about Zen, but didn't really know what it was. And
Mhm.
someone said, well, you're living right down the street from the dean of Western Zen. So if you had any questions, you could just go talk to Aitken Roshi.
Mhm.
So I was there in a little discussion group one evening. And the young man had talked about walking on the beach there on the Big Island and looking up and seeing the night sky. And he wondered about the connection between what came up in him in that moment and Zen practice. And Aitken, I thought, gave a wonderful response. He said that is your practice, to walk and look and feel what comes up.
Mhm.
So there's the word awesome has, unfortunately, to my ear, become kind of like the word groovy was when
Mhm.
I was a young child, a very young child, and things were groovy, right?
Uh-huh.
And now they're awesome. But a sense of awe,
Uh-huh.
a
Yes.
sense of being stopped in our tracks by the way things are, seems to me to be very near the core of creating art. Would be out of that space that we would paint or sing or dance or draw. And maybe very much at the core of spirituality as well, to deepen that sense of beginner's mind, we say in
Mhm.
Zen, not the mind that knows everything and is closed down, but the mind that's just starting out
Yeah.
and finding out right now what's up. What is this thing living and dying? What is this thing I call me?
The awe and mystery. Like we need mystery. We need that. And you're saying like it's the beginning of art. I think that's really true. It's like I opened my door this morning after a huge storm, and I was presented with this big full moon and blue sky, and everything was bright. And I was in awe. And I just started my gratitude. Thank you. Thank you, God, for all the beauty, and definitely I was in a very spiritual place. I could have painted right then and, you know, I don't know if I could have painted as beautiful as what I saw, but I'll tell you what, it was just so beautiful. What's interesting too, what's coming to mind is a little bit different, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Bob Ross. He's like an artist on YouTube, and I was watching him, and he was saying he was in the military for a long time, quite a few years. And he said he saw such ugly things in the military. And so um, for him, painting was painting beauty, bringing beauty into the world. And I thought, wow, that is so true. It's just, bringing beauty into the world. And that is why I paint, is from that place of awe, you know, you know.
I remember once Dr. Burns uh, told a workshop that if we weren't so numbed out, we'd all be weeping all of the time. Tears of joy, tears of grief, tears of sadness, tears of gratitude. And maybe he was pointing at this too, that our natural state is a state of awe.
Mhm.
We see it with our children, our grandchildren, that first
Absolutely.
encounter with snow or first awareness of stars, that's our natural condition. And I think if there were a wish that I would have for my patients, it would be to rediscover that, to take away the negative thinking and the um, self-defeating behaviors that stand between them and that direct apprehension of this reality, which is awe itself, I think.
Mhm. I have a client, I was asking her, because she's done a lot of CBT with me, what her experience was between CBT and creative arts. And she wrote me something. Do you mind if I read it?
I would love to hear.
Okay. Um, she said the CBT process provides clarity of the root issues for me. And once the root of the issue is discharged, it sets my mind free and I find myself at peace. only when I'm at peace does my creativity spark.
Hmm.
So it's just like what you were talking about, is that awe, that getting rid of the
Mhm.
self-talk. Yeah, to get into the
I
personal.
think the poet Rilke wrote about this too, that
Mhm,
it's when we are still enough that something new can happen.
mhm.
When we're in motion, much less likely we'll do anything other than stay in motion. The momentum just keeps us going through our day, say, doing what we do, having the usual interactions with each other. But when we find that still point, um, Eliot used that image, the still point in a turning world,
Mhm,
then the door can open.
mhm.
And it seems that for our patients as well, reaching that stillness opens up the new possibilities for them.
Yes, I think so.
I have so enjoyed our chat. I'd love to keep chatting, and our time's sadly winding down here. But I did want to ask you about, you're currently in a show out in Santa Cruz. You have some pieces there. Would love to hear where that is and what the pieces are.
First of all, you could see my gallery, and shall I just give you the name of it, Daniel?
Absolutely.
Cypress Creative Arts with an S, arts.com, cypresscreativearts.com. So I have quite a few pieces there. And then I just put two pieces in a gallery, and it was called Curator by the Sea
Hmm.
in Santa Cruz. One, actually, it's being shown today by them on Instagram, and it's called Morning Freshness. And there's another one, In the Flow, of a surfer on a big wave.
Hmm.
So I am totally humbled by the whole experience. I'm humbled by being here too. Um, just because, I have just gotten back into art, and so it's a humbling experience for me to find that people really are enjoying my work when it seems so fresh and new for me, and
Hmm.
really enjoying that.
Hmm.
I feel like, anyway, and it gives people a good feeling to see it. That makes me really
Hmm.
happy.
Those were words that I would use looking at your recent painting, fresh and new,
Oh,
and also a lot of life
mhm.
in these pieces. If there's an opposite of still life, that you'd be that opposite. A
Yeah,
lot of energy, a lot of
I
yeah.
I think I've always had that. It's like, now I can put it somewhere, right? All the
Yeah, well, Cypress, thanks again for our time together, and all the best to you on all of these many fronts, your clinical work, your painting, your teaching mindfulness to anyone who would want to come and sit at your feet. I'd like to come sit at your feet. Maybe
Oh,
when the pandemic's over, I can come and we
yeah,
can sit together. That
yeah,
sounds quite lovely.
wonderful. Or I'll come to New Mexico too and
We
see.
have plenty of both here in northern New Mexico. A lot of art, a lot of spirituality, and here and there, cognitive behavioral therapists. We're somewhat the outliers here in this artistic community, but we find our way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Daniel. Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting with you and drinking tea.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime soon.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing to our channel and check out our weekly consultation program, open to all, at allthingscbt.com.